To make the base for the hands, you roll out some clay. You cut it in half, and these parts, the cut parts, you put side by sides, and they're going to be the base, the palm of your hand. Now you take your clay and you press in the palm. Then you take it between your fingers and you create the wrist. Like, all of this will be further detailed later on. This is only the base for the hands, like we made the base for the head. The palm of your hand is about the same as from your chin to the tip of your nose. Your whole hand comes, including fingers, comes to there. Yeah, and then this, the lower arm is about 3 times, approximately 3 times that size. 1, 2, 3. Just wet your fingers a little bit with water, and you want to make this a little bit more smooth. If it fans out too much, like here, you get your knife and you cut a small piece off. Wet your finger and smoothen the edges. Because the length of this is also about the same as the width. See that? So it's almost a square. And your fingers, so look at your own hands. It's almost a square, and we're only making this part right now, and the wrist up to the elbow. So it's almost a square. Before we start working on the fingers, we actually sand this down more. And what you have to keep in mind is what the hand is going to do. Like, if the hand is going to be holding something, you want the wrist already to be bend. If you don't know what it's going to do, just have a slight angle in the hand. So if it's going to be holding something, you already bend it like that. Okay? And make sure that you have a left hand and a right hand. And the difference is that once that side is where the index finger is going to be. It's slightly higher than the other side. Okay, so you make 2 of these, and then on the elbow side you put in your piece of wire, which I'll show you if it's not bent yet. And this will work as the elbow joint. So you push it in and then get your tool and you mash it in to make sure that it doesn't come out. It gets embedded in the clay. And have it in the same angle as your hand. Okay, so you make 2 of these. If needed, you can dry them against something so they won't flatten, if that's not what you wanted, or you can have them drying like that. Roll out a very thin, long strip of clay. The thickness of it depends on how thin or thick you want your fingers, but in principle you obviously want space for 4 fingers. You cut it in half, put them side by side, and then you cut 4 fingers, and the index finger is about the same length as your palm. So you look at your puppet hand. So the index finger would be about that length. So you cut them. That's for 2. Then the next finger, your middle finger, is longer. So you just put them beside it and you cut them a little bit longer. And the next one is, again, dependent on your hand, but just look at your own hands. It's slightly longer than the index finger, slightly shorter than the other. And your pinky finger is very much shorter and thinner. So you just thin the clay a little bit. Cut it in half. And make 2 fingers. Okay, the rest of the clay you put back in your bag. Okay, now you separate them. The tops of the fingers, you just wet a little bit and smoothen them off a little bit. If it is a very hot day, you put a little bit of plastic over the other finger so they don't dry out. On a cool day, it's fine. They will be sanded when they're done. So anyway, so you got your fingers there. Then you wet the finger, the hand. Now remember that there was a left and a right hand. This, the index, where the index finger goes, is slightly higher. And make sure that you have sanded this down nice and smooth before you start. Have a look at the instructions, the written instructions. Okay, now you get your finger, you press it on to the top quite firmly. And you press it into the dry clay and you attach it. Put your finger behind it so it doesn't fall off. And again, keep in mind what your hand is going to do. Like, no hand is really this straight. So if you don't know what your hand is going to do, I would recommend that you just make a loose, very relaxed hand. And when the finger is on, you put your finger behind it and you make the joints. You bend it over. And then for the fingernail, you can just slightly press that in a little. In terms of the knuckles, we will do them when the whole hand is dry again. Now you do that with all the fingers. Keep looking at your own hands and see how they fit, how they bend, where they bend. It's a little bit more tricky to get in between the fingers, but maybe use the thinner end. Again, bend them. When the hand is going to be a fist, you obviously have to put on your finger in a different angle. So you get your finger, press it on in that position. that the clay is really attached, otherwise they will break off. Make sure that the fingers are quite close together, unless of course you want to make a hand with spread fingers, perhaps holding a ball or something. You know, have a good look at your own hands and at your puppet and decide what it's going to do. If your puppet is going to hold something, for example, a cork, wrap this in plastic first, because then the clay doesn't stick to it. And you shape the finger around your prop. Again, have a look at the instructions. Maybe it's obvious, but make sure you've got a left and a right hand. Today we'll be adding the thumbs. And again, make sure that your fingers are dry before you start working on the thumbs. Roll some clay. The thumbs, we're actually going to make that the whole thumb, and as well including this part. Your thumb is a little bit thicker than your finger and quite a bit shorter. So the ends have to be a little bit thinner than the center part. Cut it in half, see if they're the same. It's a little bit thicker. Have a look at your fingers. Cut up the remaining clay. Okay, again, have a look at your own hands and see what it does. When the hand is outstretched, it kind of comes to the side. You see this angle. If it's holding something, it's very much on the inside. So the shape, you don't see it as much on the outside then. Have a good look at your own hand. Okay, this is the index finger, that's the little finger, so obviously it goes on that side. And this is a fist kind of hand, so I want it to go that way. Then get your tool. Blend it all in. Again, later on we will be adding the detail so we can add more clay on the knuckle there. Cut off any excess clay. Blend it in. Have a look where the elevated parts are. Make sure it's also well attached here in that corner. Use your brush to get in between. Make sure it's well attached, because otherwise it will fall off or break too easily, and we don't want that to happen. The nail is, when your hand is like that, it's on the outer side, not on the top. Again, just blend it in, very gentle. Oh, that's one. And the other one, it's a different shaped hand, it's much more open, so the hand, the thumb, goes much more on the outside. Again, look at what your hand is doing, what your puppet is doing. If it's holding something, fold it around your object. If you're making children's hands, they're much more fatty, I suppose. Have a look at images online or in magazines. There we've got our hands. Leave this to dry fully, and before you start on the detailing, make sure you sand all the fingertips and anything else that needs a little bit more perfection. And then in the next stage, we're going to add all the knuckles and the muscles to really make them into working hands, and the inside. So that's very exciting.